I'm not going to miss this opportunity and go to college and wait 4 years to pursue something that I'm passionate about.
You need to really find out what you enjoy doing.
Instead of the math skills, go get life skills.
This might be the biggest thing any of us have created.
You never failed. Have you really succeeded?
All right, it's official. We're in. Today's a very special day here at the Find Your Grind office. Dingo, happy birthday, my friend.
Thanks, man.
How old are you, 21?
Yeah.
Wow, you finally made it.
Finally made it.
Yeah.
Legal.
Yeah, there we go.
Man, 21 was so long ago.
Yeah.
So what happens is...
It was.
This happened to you one day too, our guest, Casey
Getting
Adams.
ready.
Yeah.
But when you turn 34, you don't care. You don't care.
You don't care about your birthday as much.
As at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. It used to be something that you really lead up to, and you get all your friends together and you rage, and you pop into this place, you go to that place.
Yep.
And when you get to 34,
It's a little less of that.
yeah, way less.
Yeah, I think Dingo and I are going to our door tonight.
Yeah.
With my baby. Anyways, we have an amazing guest with us today, Casey Adams. How are you, bro?
I'm doing good. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Casey has been such a inspiration to me, inspiration to so many other people. I originally met you, I think it was through Instagram. I was like, who is this kid? He's interviewing every single entrepreneur and crazy successful human on the planet. And by the way,
we originally met at the Young and Reckless event with Drama that I hosted with him. And then Austin was like, yo, y'all got to meet.
Yep. And so Casey is 19?
19. Right on the money.
19 years old and has done how many interviews with people to this point?
Over 150.
Oh my God, 150 interviews. So most recently with none other than Larry King himself.
Yep, the king.
Probably a pinnacle in your short career so far,
100%.
which was so awesome to see, man. But yeah, so stoked to have you, dude. I think you're going to be an inspirational story for so many young people looking to find their grind, looking to get started. You've obviously gotten started super young and have already done things that most people have taken until 40 years old to do in their lives. So it's awesome to have you here, man. How are you feeling, man? Like, what's up?
I'm feeling good,
Yeah?
Flew into LA this morning. I woke up at 5 a.m., hit a little workout.
Okay.
Flew here, had some breakfast, and now we're here.
Yeah, is that typical for you? Like, are you an early riser?
I'm trying to be. I usually wake up at 7, but the last week, honestly, I've been waking up like 5:36. But 7 to 8 is my sweet spot. But I like testing my sleep schedule, though. That's what really, it allows me to kind of find myself in terms of what's the best time to wake up for me. But yeah, flew in today. I've been looking forward to this, so
Nice.
I'm excited for this.
Yeah, when I was 19 to like 24, I was sleeping in probably way too late. And then when I started to change that routine, things start to happen in healthy ways and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, man, because I look at that. Casey, I thought, I guess I knew you were young. I didn't know you're that young.
How old did you think I was?
Right?
I don't know. I know.
24,
No. I thought you were like 21, maybe 22. Because I was like trying to think, like, have we? But then I was like, no, we haven't like been in those situations. When I was 19, I was fortunate enough to be successful. I had a TV show at that time, but I wasn't like thinking about my future. I wasn't acting like kids like you do today, or people of your age. I can't even call you a kid because you are, but you're not.
Totally.
It's like you guys are so switched on, and you have this approach about life that like I wish I had when I was 19, because I feel like I'm just catching up to that now, and it's like thinking about the future and goals and what do I want to achieve. Back then it was like I was just flowing through life, and that's when we met, and like it was just way different. And like one thing that I like was really like drawn to you after I met you was your like ambition, and you're like a real go-getter. And like even the first story of, and we'll go back on it, but like just how you approached drama and went in and created this event with somebody that's been Drama's been a mogul now for over 10 years, you know what I mean? And to be able to get people like that's attention and then work into it and create what you're creating, like you're just at the beginning, and it's really amazing to see.
Do you go through, like, is it just a fluid thing, or are you planning out pretty methodically, like where you want to be at by the end of the year, and what's your process?
Yeah, I mean, I would say for me, everything I do is definitely intentional, at least for the things. Like, for example, I like to be practical on some things. So, for example, let's say this year I want to do another 100 interviews. I really need to make sure, like, for me, everything from connecting with Drama to connecting with Larry King and his son originally, for me, it's always been about communication and networking, right? Like, since I was 16 years old, I got into this whole social media world kind of by accident. I was 16 and I had a really bad neck injury playing football. So I was diagnosed with interspinous ligament damage. So I was in a neck brace for a little over 6 months. And it was through this process where I was depressed. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I saw both of my brothers go to college. They ended up dropping out. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to go down that route. So let me try to figure something out. And it was during this 6-month time period where I really dove into self-development, finding myself, figuring out what I want to do, and really dove into this whole entrepreneurship, social media world. And early on, I picked up a book, and you hear the quotes, right? Your network is your net worth. So for me, coming from a small town in Virginia, both my parents aren't entrepreneurs. My brothers aren't entrepreneurial at all. I was like, I need to step away from A, the people I'm hanging out with, and B, find new people in my life that can help me grow. And literally after that 6 months, I cut all my friends off and I just went into this whole networking mode, trying to connect with people on social media. Because for me, I was 16, have never been on an airplane, never traveled before. And I was like, how can I go to LA? How can I network with people I want to meet? And it literally within the last 3 years, from building a brand, from DMing people, and obviously having that methodical approach, it's led me to many amazing people and opportunities and business relationships. And it's really been the last almost 4 years now, just a complete, like, if I would have talked to myself at 16 and looking at myself now, I would have been like, I don't know how you got to where you are right now, but it was more so just relentless communication and showing up. Like senior year, I took 3 classes. I skipped 70 days of school, and I was in LA almost once a month, flying on a Friday, coming back on a Monday, staying with homies for 2 nights and going to one event and then bouncing back, and like doing that 20, 30 times within 2 years. It really helped me just build a network, which therefore led to me starting an events business and also doing a lot of consulting and working with different brands.
Were you ever nervous in the beginning of this? Like, yo, I'm going to just start hitting people up. Like what's most people are like, shit, I'm never going to try that because it sounds crazy.
I think for me, it came down to like getting a result. So for example, one of an early relationship of mine, there was this young kid named Caleb Maddox, who you should definitely meet. Have you heard of him?
No.
So I was 15, he was 14 at the time, and I'm on social media. And when I started my social media presence, I was, like I said, 15. I was private on Instagram. I had 500 followers. I'd never used it at all from a business perspective, nor did I know that wasn't even a possibility. Yeah. But I was 15 and I saw this guy, Caleb, and he was 14 and he was keynoting on stage with Tony Robbins and Gary Vaynerchuk, and he's made hundreds and thousands of dollars, wrote in 6 books. And I'm like, this dude's 14 and he's like a mogul, right? Long story short, he had like 20, 30,000 followers on Instagram. He was verified. I'm like, who is this kid? So long story short,
he's an inspiration for you, right?
For me, yeah. And it more so coming back to the point of like, I saw someone else my age doing something I want to do, and that's what inspired me, right? Yeah. Because I think a lot of young people can relate. You see people, whether they're older than you or more successful, and until you can find that relatability factor, you're like, oh, that can't be me. And you have these negative beliefs towards like yourself and your process. But I found this guy named Caleb. Shout out to Caleb if he's listening.
It's just knowing what's possible, right?
Yeah, 100%.
It's such a like broad term, but it's true. Like once you can see what's possible, you're like, oh, I can maybe potentially do this. And having the ability to go have the experience and the opportunity to actually try it. I feel like those two things kind of adding up is like the path to starting.
Yep. So go ahead.
I want to take it back to like, all right, so like you should be in college right now.
I'd be a sophomore.
You'd be a sophomore in college. What was your pre-high school like? What was it like in like middle school for you going into high school, and like what were those years like?
Yeah, so I would say I've been blessed. I come from a great family, loving family, mom and dad. They've always been supportive of anything I wanted to do in my life. But in my entire life, I played sports. So I grew up playing hockey. So that's why I love what you guys do with the NHL. I played from the age of 3. I picked up my first pair of roller skates, and then I also played ice hockey. I played hockey for 10 years. And like an early childhood dream of mine was like NHL, but small town in Virginia, no one usually goes to the NHL from there. So long story short, I ended up playing lacrosse and then football. But in middle school, I would say like I was very present, meaning like I didn't have this plan. I didn't know what I wanted to be, but I always tell people this, like whenever I'd be handed like a Scantron where it's like career planning, what do you want to do? I would always just check the box business, because my uncle was involved in, like, he had his own business, and obviously you follow all these successful people or know of all these successful people, and it ties back to the business side of things, right? But I never had a strategic plan where it's like, I want to go to college, get this job, and do this. It was more so just, I don't want to get a job. I can tell both of my parents, they have 9 to 5s. My mom's a teacher. She teaches special ed class, and I've never, I would say, wanted to attach the amount of money I can make due to the time you spend in a day. So I more so was able to learn, and I say this a lot, from my brothers, meaning I saw them go through high school, surround themselves with negative people that were only doing drugs, turning up, just doing the most. And I saw that manifest 2-3 years later, and they're exactly the same people they were 3 years ago. And I was like, all right, yo, Cody, Cam, my brothers, I was like, they didn't change, therefore they didn't change their circumstances. So for me, I think moving into high school, like 9th grade year, that was when I just was really, I would honestly say I was always passionate about just hanging out with my friends, having a good time, you know, playing sports, just going.
Were you around good people? Were your friends good people, or were they
I would
kind
say,
of just?
I mean, good people, but they were the biggest potheads.
Yeah.
People that turned up, and they're great people, but they didn't have any ambition.
Sure.
Meaning, like,
Yeah.
I always loved going to the gym. My dad put me in the gym when I was like in 7th grade. I always loved like push-ups and pull-ups, and I had like this pull-up bar at my house and like little like accomplishments. Like I think even to this day, like I fuel off of accomplishments. Meaning, like, boom, I did Larry King interview on December 10th. All right, what's next? Like,
Yeah.
it fulfills me. I have this 24-hour rule where it's like if you do 1,000 push-ups in 24 hours, cool. Celebrate for 24 hours and then pretend like it didn't happen. Like,
Yeah.
you need to keep having those
Yeah, have you?
accomplishments.
Come on, have you?
1,000 push-ups? No. But maybe we'll try it out.
So like, I totally resonate with the sibling thing. Like, I had a brother and got to watch all his mistakes, and you watch him making mistakes, and if you look up to someone like that, they make the mistakes, and you know not to make those mistakes.
Yep.
I come from a small town in Australia, and for me, it was like, if I stay here, end up exact same. I'll end up in jail, end up
Yep.
doing bad things, or I'd end up being a builder or a carpenter, which is fine. That's what my friends do back home. But I was like, I can never do that. And snowboarding was what led me to America, to everything else beyond. So it's like having somebody make mistakes for you and acknowledging that, and then knowing that, giving that ambition and drive to get out of there, you're gonna get out of there.
Totally.
But I feel like that's so different because the majority of people still witness those mistakes, but latch on to
100%.
be the same person that your brother was or whatever. You know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah.
And that's why Casey's so smart at such a young age to be able to like realize that. So you're going into high school. Was there academics? Was there ever a surge? Obviously, did your parents want you to go to college?
Absolutely. It's funny because like I was a great student. I graduated high school with like a 4.0 GPA, and like I did the school thing, and I wasn't just skipping homework and like peace out school. Like I was always interested in making my parents proud, and that was therefore led to having good grades, right? Having A's and B's or whatever it is.
Yep.
But for me, like I love lacrosse. So my goal, bringing it back, is 9th grade goal was play lacrosse at University of Virginia, UVA, and do that, get a scholarship, go to UVA, and boom, that's the plan. But literally, it was one of those things where this all kind of happened by accident when I had my neck injury. It was like the first day of football practice, the first day of hitting practice. I've been planning, and like everyone's been working out for 6 months. I was like the shortest kid on the team, starting runner back, about to play for varsity the following year. And literally the first day was this neck injury. And
You're kidding. That happened to you the first day?
well, sophomore year, going into sophomore year, it was like
so you had a year, and then this was like
like first year of high school was like, I feel like in my eyes, like my only year of high school, meaning like when I was present there and had nothing else really going on, or really wasn't putting my attention towards like what I wanted to do in my future. And then this whole injury happened, and I really just dove into, I read more books in 6 months than I did my entire life. And it's really just finding mentors online. That's how I really got into that whole space.
What books?
Because also too, there was Instagram when you were in high school.
Yeah, 100%.
Which is you were like, oh, there wasn't even Facebook.
He's 19.
Yeah, I know. Like,
He's already knowing Instagram.
Yeah, I know. It's great. It's great.
Literally, Twitter. Like,
yeah.
When did Twitter come about?
Not when we were in high school.
2011, I think.
2011. And when was Instagram there?
2013. I
Yeah.
believe.
Wow. Yeah. We had nothing.
Yeah,
We
but
didn't even have YouTube.
We had each other.
What books?
So one of my favorites is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And it just talks about relationships and building relationships, providing value, and overall like the little things, whether that's remembering someone's name or smiling to someone on first impression. Like for me, I took that book, which is literally like my Bible for relationships, I took that book and made it digital, meaning whenever I send someone a DM, I don't copy and paste, I don't spam people. Everything's genuine, and it's all intentful, meaning back like when I'm reaching out to people, I always tell people like never spam, send 20 messages to someone in the DMs and just try to get their attention. Like be intentful, be strategic, and understand exactly what you want to reach out to someone for. But from an early age, reading that book was definitely pinnacle for me. And then I love Think and Grow Rich. And then
what was that one?
Think and Grow Rich. One of my favorites. And from a more tactical side, so Gary Vee, he came out with his book Crush It, and then is now Crushing It. And that was one of the books regarding social media that led me in the direction of like wanting to build a personal brand. He was talking heavily about putting out content, about like just documenting your journey and building this following. And yes, I've followed people on social media, and I had people that I were following just in terms of like I was a fan of them, but I never looked at it from a producer. I was always the consumer on social. So as soon as I had made that switch in my mind of like I need to stop spending time on social being a consumer and just watching everyone's life, but also produce content and show my life. And at 16, I wasn't traveling, I wasn't doing anything cool, but I was authentic. And I think that's why I was able to build this audience early on, where I was doing these book reviews and showing people I was in my bedroom at 16 watching this YouTube video or whatever it is. And I actually started on Snapchat. That's how I got involved on Snapchat marketing, and I was doing affiliate marketing at like 15, 16. That's how I made my first like $20 online. But I built up this Snapchat audience about like book reviews, and I was getting like 3,000 to 6,000 viewers a day due to all these Snapchat forums I was getting into. And long story short, it was always like, okay, I'm about to turn 16. How do I not have a job? How can I sustain myself? I'm about to get my license. How can I just more so prove it to my parents so that I can never have to go work? And long story short, I was able to get involved with affiliate marketing and then Facebook advertising, which I therefore started doing for like my dentist and my chiropractor and all these different local businesses in my area, just from knocking on doors, cold calling, and just was able to build up this little residual recurring revenue business that was all based on Facebook ads that I learned on YouTube. You know what I'm saying?
What do you think the key parts of producing like quality content or good content to get noticed, right? For a lot of people who are just like, okay, like, yeah, I spend a lot of time consuming, but I want to start to create stuff too to build my personal brand, right? Which the personal brand thing is such a, I guess it has been around for a while, but really through social, the past 5 years, the personal brand idea has become something so much bigger. So like, what are the, I guess, key simple things that people can do to grow their brand?
I would say right now, just coming into 2020, if I was to recommend any piece of advice, it's number one, staying current and on top of trends. So meaning, like, for example, a platform like TikTok, right? Every personal brand, right? You want to get attention. You want to gain awareness. You want people to know who you are as a person. That's the whole point of it, is to gain this audience. So I would say staying up to date on current platforms. Because right now, for example, something like Instagram, you can't just open up an account, post 30 pieces of content, and one will go viral. Like right now, like, and as you know, the organic reach is so down compared to any other platform.
Yeah, right. So like, I look at it as like, and then you look in age brackets, right? Like 30 to 50 is probably like high Twitter, right? And then you're like maybe 25 to 45 is like high Instagram, right? And then below you've got Snapchat and now TikTok. And TikTok, I feel like the reason it has become so big is because you don't have to be anybody to have success on TikTok.
Totally. And you're not thinking so much about, I mean, you're still thinking about what would do well probably, but not to the extent of Instagram where everything's so like curated.
They made the algorithm that you could literally have 0 followers and you could post a video that could get 1 million views.
It's like the new streaming. It's the new streaming service for like Gen Z and below. You know what I mean?
Like, hilarious story, by the way. So Arfa, who's right over here behind the camera.
What up, Arfa?
Literally, this is like 2 months ago. She's like, oh, I don't want to get on TikTok, and her content is amazing. She has some of the best traveling content ever. So I'm like, you need to get on TikTok. So she makes an account, and I post a video for her. Within 24 hours, 1.4 million views, and she gains 4,000 followers. And it was like her in Iceland on a black sand beach, and it was just insane.
I posted a video of Stephen Korn, our finance guy, giving out machetes the other day that has like 600,000 views.
Yeah, I posted a video and got 13 views.
Hey,
we'll get him on there. Come on. What's your account? The dingo in snow? What is it?
Who cares? I'm done. Social media, for you guys. I'm old. Nobody cares.
But I would say too, just back to the question, just regarding building a personal brand, I think for me is been collaboration and communication. Those have been the top 2 pillars, meaning collaborating with people, right? And it comes down to just being practical. Let's say Nick Gross has a brand, he has credibility. Let's say for me, I always talk about finding your collaboration vehicle. So for me, when I was 17, starting a podcast, it allowed me to sit down with people I knew in the business world, influencers, whatever it is at the time, to sit down with them, have a conversation with them. I promote my podcast. Hopefully they promote it to gain awareness for their story. And overall, it led to a collaboration, which therefore would build my audience, but more so build me as a person and get me involved in their world, right? So for me, I always look for a collaboration vehicle, and I found mine early on, which was podcasting, because, and I think for a lot of young people especially, like if you don't know what you want to do, or you want to start getting your feet moving, talk to different people, go to different places, experience different things. That's the only way you're going to get somewhere different than where you currently are. So for me, and I always recommend to people, like having a podcast allows you to have a conversation with someone, whether it's your neighbor or let's say Larry King, right? Like everyone wants a platform to talk. And especially if you have an audience or you're building that audience, it gives you that valuable vehicle to talk to people. So for me, when I started mine, I never expected me to interview Larry King, or tomorrow I'm interviewing Jordan Belfort and all these amazing people. And it literally just started off on Skype with my homies on a Skype interview, posting on Facebook and getting 30 views. But it led me to building my audience, building my brand, collaborating with dozens of like world-class people. And I think that's been my whole distinctive advantage, is having those people on my side, supporting me, doing an interview with me, collaborating with me, because at the end of the day, you can't do it alone, right? So I think if you utilize other people's audiences in a good way and figure out a way to collaborate with them.
I think like you said it right there too, and I heard Drama say it. Actually, I think it was in Jordan's interview, and like I listen to all his podcasts, and every time I'm like, wow, you did a great job. I text Drama, and Drama said to Jordan that like the reason why I think podcasts work so well is because it's people that have lived real situations, having a real conversation. It used to be back in the day with people would interview people. It was like a regular newscaster or a radio host or like some like glorified like FM goofy kind of person interviewing these people. We never really got real interviews, right? And the podcast world, it seems the reason that it works, the reason why Joe Rogan is doing so well is because he's a curious person that has lived this crazy life, and he's a very smart man, and he sits down and has real conversations with people. And I think that is why podcasts have taken off so well, right? It's about real people that have lived situations, another person having those situations, having that conversation, which never happened until 10 years ago, until podcasts started. One other thing I wanted to say before we get too lost, like when you were like interviewing, like going door to door, right? Knocking on the dentist door, knocking on the local shop store. What was your approach?
Yeah, so the reason why I even started doing that, so this guy named Ty Lopez was a mentor to me, and he was talking about building a social media marketing agency, how to provide services to local businesses, managing their Facebook, Instagram, and really just building out that social footprint for them. And I would say my approach was this. It would more so, I would figure out, because at that time I knew, as someone that's grew up with social media, how to use it, how to navigate it, what looks good, what actually is like gets attention on social in terms of just from a visual perspective. Like if your Instagram looks good and you're young, you can kind of tell instantly, right? If you're hip to the game. But I would say my approach was this. It's more so just coming down to like, okay, what problem am I solving for this person? Whether that's their website isn't good, and then I have them pay me to build their website, and I work with a virtual assistant online, and really just figuring out ways that I can truthfully provide a service to this client. And for me, it came down to coming at it with just Instagram and Facebook at the end of the day. So I was also doing viral video marketing. So we would come up with this brand story video. We would go to either the local dentist or whatever it is, have a videographer that I knew in the local area, shoot a video, and then run Facebook ads to it. So for me, that was my approach for like the quote unquote first service that I was selling.
And most of these companies were just in, like you would just verbally pitch them on like, hey, your website isn't usually up to par. Like I'm going to come in and
usually verbally pitch them, or come in there and have like a sit down meeting with them, and more so just by studying and watching, whether that's sales videos on YouTube. Like my whole self-education came from YouTube. It's like I have a YouTube degree, right? So for me, it came down to just studying sales and just testing and experimenting. Like for me at 16, I just wanted to completely get out of my comfort zone, and it was very uncomfortable, right? Picking up the phone, calling, like that's the last thing I want to do when I get out of high school is pick up a phone and call a dentist. Right?
And before that, maybe there are ways to try it with like a buddy's business or something that's a little more close to try and test things out before you're going and pitching like.
Well, I'm sure not everybody said yes.
Yeah. Oh, not at all.
Totally.
You know what I mean? I'm sure a lot of people hung up the phone, and it's like one of those things. You got to keep knocking. But the thing that I like about that most is this is something any kid can do anywhere around the world. If they have an interest and in marketing and in social media and in content or video, it's something that any kid can do. And that's a skill set that like, honestly, not everyone has, but to put yourself out of that comfort zone, I think that's half the reason why you are here today, because you started doing that back then.
100%.
That's the key to life, right? You take risks and good things happen every once in a while.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But it's hard to take the risks.
100%.
Just put yourself out there.
So we're still in, you're still in Virginia.
So I live in Scottsdale now.
No, I know that.
Okay.
But I want to get to the process of like, all right, mom, dad, this is the road I'm going down. I don't think I'm going to go to college.
Yeah, so it was definitely a hard conversation, and I think at first, like when I was first it's a funny story. So the first time I ever went to San Diego. I booked a flight for me and my dad, and the whole thing was I was either gonna buy a new snowboard that year or book a flight to San Diego and go to this event across the country. And my parents have never been to California. They're like, what are you even considering? Like, what is this event you want to go to where these entrepreneurs are speaking, right? And I'm like, dude, trust me, this dude, Caleb Maddox, invited me. I gotta go, right? And they just think it's so like crazy. So I booked these flights without even telling my dad. And I'm like, hey, got the flights. Here we go. January 12th, you got to take off work, right? So I just send it. And we go to California. And long story short, I say this because it more so came down to like just proving myself. So we go to San Diego. I speak on this little panel. The following day I get back and I DM this guy, Ty Lopez, who was like, I was learning social media marketing from him online. And I was like, hey, 8 months ago, I was super depressed, in a neck brace. And just by following your content and diving into YouTube content, I've been able to do X, Y, and Z. Just wanted to say thank you. And Ty has millions of followers, very successful entrepreneur. He hits me back 2 weeks later. He's flying me out to LA, books a flight for me and my mom. I come out, go to his house in Beverly Hills, shoot all this video content, meet his team. Then I end up meeting a mentor there. And then the rest of 2017, I'm going to LA like every other month on my own. And that was the hardest sale. It was selling my parents and letting me travel alone. And that was like the hardest thing to do. But it came down to a year later before I had that conversation, just starting to do things differently and having them actually say, hey, go do you.
So
it was hard though.
You were doing that. Was that your senior year?
Junior.
That was your
Junior year.
Yeah.
That was your junior year of high school.
Yep.
So
Was this like on weekends or pretty much, right?
So it was pretty much, here's my setup. I would book a flight on like early Friday. I would get to LA on like Friday, maybe before noon. And then I would leave Monday, late as I can Monday, so I can get home and go to school Tuesday. And I probably did that minimum once a month, if not every other month for all junior year. And then senior year just got worse. Like I literally missed like 70 days of school. I would miss weeks on end. And I kind of had this deal though with one of my teachers. I would just like buy her Chick-fil-A once a week and like
there you go.
Slide the chicken sandwich onto the table.
My attendance was good.
Yeah.
But no, it was definitely one of those things where I just like full commitment and like back to the basics. Like as soon as I started gaining this momentum, like I had no plan B, no other option. I was like, this is what I'm doing. I'm not gonna miss this opportunity and go to college and wait 4 years to pursue something that I'm passionate about. You know, both of my brothers, like I said, they went to college, they ended up dropping out, or it wasn't for them. And yes, I could have went to a school I wanted to in Virginia, but it wasn't in line with my values and where I was going, especially with what I was learning at the time regarding business and entrepreneurship and just anything relating to money, right? So I don't think it was a hard answer for them. It was more so like they saw my passion for what I'm doing, and they saw me starting to make some money and me having these opportunities where they were like, hey, like we will support you. But that's obviously the last thing they wanted to happen, especially from just like a moral perspective. Like I was supposed to be, out of the 3 children, the one that goes to college. Right?
Yeah, but in reality, like you, by going backwards and forwards in what you're doing those 2 years, you're like getting your master's degree. You know what I mean? 100%. Like most people are getting ready to go to college. You're like still in high school, and like you're getting all the information and everything you need, and you're putting in the footwork to like.
Most parents don't think about it that way though, right?
100%.
Yeah, but it's so true though.
The ones that do, it's you know, and that's why you should be an example to lots of parents out there that if you have a gift or you're talented and you're successful and you've got a drive, like go do it, because it's like, imagine if your parents are like, no, you got to wait, Casey, and then you got to wait till you graduate college, so you're stuck in college for, 4 years, you get to 22 or 23 or whatever it is when you graduate, and you had to start then. You wouldn't have even started now. You'd still be 4 years off.
By the way, that's how many interviews have you done? How many interviews?
150.
Yeah, 150 that would not have happened up to this point, right?
And it's so funny too, because like regarding parents, so speaking of drama, so I met drama just like on Instagram. This was like February 2018.
So this is when you were doing your trips.
Yeah. But the first time I interviewed drama was just through Skype, and it's funny because my mom and like our whole family, we used to watch Rob Dudek's Fantasy Factory. Like that was our show growing up. So like it was like super cool for my mom to be like, oh my God, you interviewed drama. So this is a hilarious story, and it's just like shows like in terms of like one of my goals was like, how can I just prove myself to my parents or like get them like excited about what I'm doing. So I ended up meeting drama like June that year in person. I went to his office for the first time. We just had a cool conversation, interviewed him again in person, and there was this charity event that I bought this ticket to. It was like $1,000 for this dinner, and it was Gerard Adams' charity event, and it was Monday, and I usually fly home Monday because that was my little like travel schedule, right? And I'm like, I have to fly out Tuesday, and me and my mom were like arguing all day, and she was like, no, you have to come home, blah blah blah. But I was with Drama that day. I'm like, Drama, you gotta FaceTime my mom and sell her on letting me stay in LA one more day. So, and this is all on YouTube. It's hilarious. So Drama calls my mom and she answers and like, oh my God, like, hey, oh my God. She's like freaking out.
He's like, Mom.
Yeah. So it's hilarious though. So
hi, Mom Adams.
So earlier that day though, I was joking with my mom. I'm like, Mom, if I get you this, like, she's always wanted like a Louis Vuitton little pocket purse, pocketbook,
yeah,
right?
what mom doesn't want a little
right?
pocket purse?
Yeah, every mom should have one,
She never had one. And I'm like, earlier that day, I'm like, Mom, please, like, I'll get you a Louis Vuitton thing. Please, please, please. And she's just shutting me down. So I told Drama that, and he was like, she's saying no, no, no. He was like, oh, what if he gets you, like, the little thing you wanted to get earlier? And she was like, oh, maybe, we'll see. He's like, all right, done. Hangs up the phone, and then long story short, he's like, all right, bro, go do it. You got to go buy the thing for her. And then she said, you can stay. So long story short, the first day I met Drama, which goes back to the point of like relationship building, like a funny, cool story that happened. Go to Louis Vuitton, buy her this thing, send Drama a picture. My mom lets me stay with Drama's help, go to this charity event. And it was a cool little story. But the reason I say that is because of this. Like, I knew that whether that's going to that one dinner with Gerard Adams or his mentor Ryan Blair, that I was always passionate about the present moment. I didn't want to wait 6 months to go to the next one. Like, for me, it always came down like, how can I make this happen now and not have to wait? Because that's 6 months of time, a lot can change. There can be so many different opportunities if I don't go to that one event or if I don't do that one interview. So I became obsessed with just the accomplishments, meaning like the little wins,
being
small
present,
wins, yeah, stacking the bricks, right? Yes, thinking long term, but more so thinking like, how can I just do, be in LA, go to events, interview people, continue, showing up. And I think for me and any young person, if you just continue to show up, things will present themselves to you. And I think for me, it's having little stories like that, but dozens of them on different occasions that allowed me to just get into these different circles with different people and do these interviews by A, showing up, but B, just being relentless with not only even with my parents, but just knowing what I want for the purpose of my long-term vision, right? And long story short, my parents, by little things like that, they started to just not only believe in me more, but kind of say like, hey, we know he's super passionate about what he's doing. Like, we're going to just let him do him.
Yeah, and then you started to do events with Drama, right? Like, talk a little bit about that. Yeah, what was that collaboration like? How did that work?
So one of my mentors, Dan Fleshman, who is just a complete mentor to me. I met him at the first event I went to in San Diego, and he always told me, he's like, if you want to build your network, you can go to events or you can host events, but if you do both, like, you can really truly build a network fast because you become the guy that's like putting on these events. So this was like 2017, and moving into 2018, me and my buddy Kieran, we got this Airbnb in San Diego, and we maybe had like 20, 30,000 followers on Instagram at the time. We're building our audiences. We rent out this Airbnb in San Diego, and we're like, all right, we're just going to have this free event and invite some of our influencer friends and see who comes, just for like a networking perspective. 200 people ended up showing up. We have these food, and we catered some stuff, and it was just super cool, super fun. So we're like, okay, let's do another event in Los Angeles. So we get an Airbnb. This is like 3 months later, and get this house in Beverly Hills, Airbnb it out. We're like, all right, hopefully people show up. We sold tickets for like $100 or whatever. And it was more so just a networking event. We built the sales funnel and had the tickets and had some like speaker friends come and just there to network. 250 people ended up showing up. Tom Anderson that invented MySpace, all these cool people.
Tom showed up?
Yeah, I was like, what?
Tom.
I was like, super cool. Like all these people that like I was just like mentors of mine. I didn't know them, but people that I knew.
Did you even know what MySpace was?
I never was on MySpace. I respect him for what he's built, but it was like, cool, like just a bunch of cool people ended up showing up through the people that I invited, right? And it just showed me like, wow, like I can not only meet so many other cool people just by having events, but I fell in love with just being the curator of moments, right? So long story short, did events a lot in 2018, and I invited Drama to speak at an event that I was hosting in Phoenix. And the first time, this was October 2018. He couldn't make it the first one. January 2019, he came out, him, D, and they just flew out on their own dime, wanted to support it. And they came out, spoke. We had like 300 people there at this house called the Build Your Empire House at the time. And 2 weeks later, coming out of this event, Drama randomly texted me. And prior to this, we're not doing anything together. He's just someone that I consider a mentor and a friend. And he texts me. He's like, yo, what do you think about doing an event together in LA? And I'm like, keeping my cool. I'm like, dude, Drama's a mentor to me. I've been watching him on MTV for years. I'm like, hell yeah, bro, let's do it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So long story short, we ended up just more so setting the first event up back in May last year, and just through text, working with his team,
was a
calling
cool
him once,
event.
calling him once a
Fun.
week. And did you come to the first one?
I think I did.
Okay.
Yeah,
Then we
the
didn't-
one right here in Silver Lake,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I
Did
was
we
there.
meet there?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think
know.
we did.
Yeah, I was in the cuts. I was like in the back just scoping it out.
Yeah. So we did that one. That was super fun, super chill, and like more so that led to the second one, which we obviously met more formally there. But
Yep.
that was for me super cool, a cool experience. Met a lot of amazing people and things like that. I believe whether that's you're the one hosting it or the one just being there in that environment with those people, like that's something that I truly fell in love with, because there's just so many opportunities that can come from that, especially if you're young, especially if you're just trying to provide value to people. Like those are environments that you just need to show up in, like as much as you can.
Yeah, especially the conversations that happen within that room. It's not even the conversations. Yes, the conversations on stage are what you're there for.
Yep.
But it's what I noticed. When I went to the second one, what I noticed was the conversations happening within the room. And the people that are in the room having those conversations.
Yep.
I think that's like a super important thing, and that being able to lead to more and more of those, and the different variety of people. You know what I
Totally.
mean? Like you're hearing like real big stories from the fashion industry.
Yep.
Or you're hearing Deirdre tell his like amazing story
Love
of
that
like
speech.
anyone that meets Rob, like people are always like, oh, what's he like off camera? Like, is he the same on camera? He's the exact same person. The guy is just this
Yep.
like ball of energy that like powers it through. So how did you end up in Arizona?
Yeah. So this brand, Build Your Empire, which I was a part of for a good year and a half. So long story short, my two business partners lived in Arizona for the past 6 years.
Yep.
And it was one of those things where I was working with them. They were clients of mine. I was helping them on Facebook doing like some viral video marketing, where leading into my senior year when I was working with them, I was like, I never really expected to be in Arizona, but my two buddies that I was traveling a lot with, Kieran and Jeff, Jeff is a big YouTuber. They're from DC, which is Northern Virginia, and I was from Richmond, so we were like 2 hours apart. So we became like best friends, and like all these travels that I was been talking about this whole time were mainly with them in terms of like I had my squad from Virginia, so therefore it was like my parents were like, okay, he's with his little squad, they know him, it's cool. So Jeff, we all go to Arizona one time and just to check it out, because Jeff has been wanting to live there his whole life. He has an uncle out there or whatever. I go there and I'm like, what the hell is in Arizona? Like, it's just the desert, right? We go there and my two business partners are there, and our whole concept that we wanted to do with this thing called the Build Your Empire House, which is like this entrepreneur incubator where we have an office, the podcast studio, the event venue, and all my homies live there. So we did this concept for a little over 6 months right in Scottsdale, and long story short, that was like the vehicle that led me to Arizona. And it was something that completely just changed the direction of my life in terms of it was that opportunity. It was capitalizing on it, working with my two partners, having these events, bringing my friends and people into one environment where it's just everyone's fueling each other. And it was just a super fun opportunity that really led me to obviously meeting drama and having those events in Scottsdale, and really, I would say, took me across the country from, living in my parents' house to finally moving out. And for me, I never got to see, like, both my brothers, they still live at home. One's 22, one's 25. And for me to move out, I was the youngest of the three. So I consider myself, and my parents say this, like the little big brother, where it's like I was the first one to leave, and it was just super cool, super fun. But that was like the biggest jump in terms of like leaving my comfort zone and completely being on my own across the country. No families on the West Coast. But leading back to the question, it was my partners were out there, and we just had this concept called the Build Your Empire House that we did for about good 6 months.
Yep.
But yeah, it was sick.
What was it like interviewing Larry King?
Dude, it's actually absolutely insane. And
Was that always a goal of yours?
100%. I have it written down in my journal in like 2016.
Yeah.
As soon as I started my podcast.
Yeah.
Gary Vee, he's like inspired me to start my podcast before I answer the question. So I was DMing Gary Vee, and I set up this little 10-minute meeting in New York, because he always, does little collabs with people or whatever. He was like, you should start a podcast. And I read his book, and I was like, I'm going to interview 40 people before we meet. He was like, cool. So I interviewed like 40 people in 60 days, the first original 40, a lot of like just good friends of mine. And I meet him, and he just was like, dude, consistently collaborate with the A crowd, keep doing your thing. And that more so led me to just being completely all in on the podcast from a networking perspective, which led me, like, I would never imagine that I would have interviewed Larry King, just in terms of like, he's an icon.
How
in
nervous
the
were you on a scale
broadcasting
of 1 to
world.
10? Were you nervous?
4.
A 4?
Not at all.
Okay,
Yeah.
you were just ready.
Yeah, I was ready. Like,
All right,
our
all
first
right.
shot, the whole thing. Like,
Yeah.
I was so prepared, literally for 3 weeks straight. I swear. So
Asking the questions over and over to the wall. You're just like,
actually,
oh, sorry.
I go in with no questions.
Okay.
I go in with curiosity, and
Cool.
that's every interview I do. I never really prepare. Obviously, like I watched all of Larry's interviews
Sure.
where he's getting interviewed, and I consume a lot of their content. Obviously, I read everything about them, but I let my curiosity drive the questions. And yes, I have key topics that I want to cover.
Yep.
But I would say it was one of those things where I met Larry's son, Chance King, at a dinner, and it was sort of like the alley-oop, how I got the Larry King interview, because a lot of like young people, especially like, and even myself 3 years ago, I would ask like, how was this 19-year-old able to interview Larry King? And it just came from being in the right place at the right time. So my good friend Michael Gruen, shout out to Michael, he helped me get an interview with Tilman Ferritta, who's the owner of the Houston Rockets, and he came out with his book called Shut Up and Listen, and he owns Mastro Steakhouse and all, he owns 600 different restaurants. He's multi-billionaire, and that was like A, the first billionaire I interviewed, B, like just someone of that stature of, he owns the Houston Rockets, he's a massive public figure, where that interview sort of like changed my thinking of like who I want to interview and who I can interview. And I built this new identity of like who I want to interview moving into 2020. So we go to this private dinner at Mastro Steakhouse in Beverly Hills, where it's like 20 of us. It's me, Michael, some different people that have podcasts, and then Tilman and his team. And I met Chance King there, who's Larry's son, and I didn't even know who he was. He was just the most humble individual. He's like, yeah, I go to USC, I play baseball, and then Tillman's going around the table, and he's like, Chance, such a pleasure being on your dad's show today, and I put 2 and 2 together. I'm like, oh, he was on Larry King's show. Oh, Chance King. Got it, as his son. So me and Chance built a relationship, and he actually came to the Young and Reckless event. He that was our first more so like second interaction, but it was one of those things that was in October, and Larry really hasn't done an interview in 2 years. He had a stroke this year. He's in a wheelchair. He wasn't doing well when it comes to health wise. So he eventually helped me set it up, and it's the most crazy thing too, because I was walking around it's Westgate Mall right over here, right? Westfield in Westfield Mall, and I randomly run into Larry King, like 3 weeks after the Young and Reckless event, and I'm like before Thanksgiving, and I'm like, well, I saw him.
100% he does.
Yeah, 100%.
That's how we got here.
Dude, absolutely. I completely approached him. He was with 2 people, and
He's got an in.
I tapped his buddy on the shoulder. I was like, hey, Larry, I just want to introduce myself. I met Chance at the Tilman Ferritta dinner. Just wanted to say hello, and then it's funny because he's like, oh yeah, he told me about you. We got to do your show, and like he already his son was talking to him about him, and I was like, this is great. So randomly on Thanksgiving Day, or no, the day after Thanksgiving, I'm heading back to Phoenix, and his son Chance texts me. He's like, hey man, I'm thankful that we met this year. Let me know when you're gonna be back in LA, because let's set up this interview with my dad. I was like, give me a date within the next 2 weeks, I'm there. So December 10th was the day, and for the next 2 weeks it was more so just like wanting to really perfect this interview, whether that's the questions or just listening to his prior interviews, because it was a moment in my life where I'll always remember it, right?
Well, dude,
he's a legend.
And I'm sure he saw so much of himself.
Yeah,
in
for
you,
sure,
right?
because
Like,
he's been doing that
60
a
years.
long
Right? But this is like
time.
Yeah.
What were you most curious about?
I would say for me, because I didn't want to make it like everyone asks him, what's your favorite interview, right? For me, one of the questions that I remembered asking was like, what makes people great? He's done over 60,000 interviews. He's interviewed the last 10 presidents, I believe it is. And he told me they're driven. Every single person that is great is driven. And I think for me, I wanted to take a piece from him in which he's taken from all these different people he's interviewed, because he's not only so knowledgeable, but his presence and his energy, like as soon as the cameras turned on, he just turned into this like machine. It's like when the cameras are on, he's there, he's completely in the moment, and he's also just curious himself. Like he started asking me questions during the interview, and I was like, whoa, don't flip the table.
Yeah, because that's what he does. He started his career as a radio jockey in Florida?
In Miami.
Right.
Yep, he moved to Miami, and the first day he was on air, his last name's Larry Zeiger.
He went silent, right?
Yeah, he didn't know what to say. He was frozen because he was just given he was just given a new name. So Larry King, is his manager at the time, right? He was looking through this magazine, and it was like King's Wholesale Liquor, and his name was Larry Zeiger, and he was like, you can't use that name, and he was like, you're gonna be Larry King. So 10 minutes before going on air for the first time, he gets this brand new name. So cameras turn on, he freezes, then he's like, welcome back, it's Larry King. And that was the first time he ever said that name. And for long story short, though, he always remembers that one moment in that exact story where like that name was now obviously the legendary Larry King in which he is now.
Yep.
Like it came from this little magazine, King's Wholesale Liquor ad, and he just went with it. You know, he didn't ask questions. He just rode with the flow. But I think the biggest takeaway for me was just, and he literally said it. He says they're going to need to carry him out, meaning he says, I want to continue broadcasting until the day I die. Like he wants to continuously to live his passion, to live his truth, and just to remain curious into other people.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most important takeaway I had, where it's like his passion is pulling him, you know.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to still be doing interviews today. It's just, but he's fired up. He's like, yo, 2020 moving into the election year. He's like, I'm ready to roll. Like he's on fire. He's like, I'm gonna get my foot working again. I'm gonna get out of this wheelchair. We're ready to roll. Like he is excited about life. And I think for someone that's 86 years old to see that energy, like it excites me.
Well, he found what he really likes to do.
Yeah.
Which is important, which by the way, it's interesting to hear him say, you know, great people are driven, but being driven sometimes is hard for a lot of people. Like, how do you find that drive? And I think it comes from a lot of things. Finding something that you love to do. Maybe it's like a family circumstance where where you recognize something that you don't want to be. Like, it has to come from somewhere, you know. But
For sure.
I think it's important that you find how to be driven. You know, I think some of us are born with a little bit more drive and like,
For sure.
you know, excitement to get to that point than others, but still, I think it has to come from somewhere, you know?
Well, I think so
100%.
too. Like broadcasting changed so much over the course of since when he first started into like the early 2000s and today. Like the original talk show host will be gone because of people that podcast.
Yep.
You know, so for him at 86 years of age to look at Casey Adams at 19 years of age, I guarantee you, dude, he's gonna remember your interview more than he remembers most of those interviews because he sees so much of himself in there with you. What is Casey Adams' goal for 2020?
For 2020. Yeah, I mean, I would say there's a lot, and I kind of like to break down different goals and sort of separate them, whether that's financially, whether that's just business opportunity. But for me, moving into 2020, I think I always like to base things off of interviews nowadays, meaning like, for example, some of my goals this year are interview Ellen, Oprah, Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel. And I want to interview the best interviewers, meaning like the talk show host, Joe Rogan, right? I want to make a staple in terms of, let's say I turn 20 in July, right? I want to accomplish those things before I turn 20 in terms of just interviewing some greats, and whether they all happen or none of them happen, that's one of my goals when it comes to the podcast. But even from a, I would say, podcast perspective, everything I do now, like I reach out to all my guests, I book all the guests, I do everything. One of my goals this year is to do some sort of sign to some network potentially. I want to really amplify my voice through a well-oiled machine that's out there, whether that's Podcast One or all these different podcast networks, because I think it can help me not only delegate to other people that have bigger opportunities and bigger distribution networks and really not only sign to something, but I've built the credibility and I've been able to interview all these great people independently, where I really want to see whatever that looks like. I don't know the broadcasting world. I don't know when it comes to the podcast network game, but that is one of my goals. And I think for me, it comes down to asking the right questions to the right people to help get there. But that is definitely the plan.
Well, for sure. All those people you mentioned, that's how they became successful, right?
Yeah.
They became the interviewer. And for you, it's like, I feel what you're saying there. Like a podcast, it's so personal. Like even like with what we do here, it's like, if you don't reach out personally, people aren't as intuitive to it.
Yep.
Because most of the people you're reaching out to do a podcast typically aren't people that you would hear on the television or the radio anyway, right?
100%.
It's more of a personal situation. And I think you'll get there. I think all those people are gonna follow your story and look at that and see something in themselves, and you'll totally get there because those people, Ellen will find out what you're doing, and she's going to want to interview.
Yep.
That's a fact. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you may not have to DM her. You may get a DM from the Ellen Show one day that's like, oh hey Casey, we want you to come in, because that's the drive that you've like given there, and to see that like that's where you want to go. Those people need you too. Like
Totally.
the people like I heard Jimmy Kimmel. I heard Jimmy Kimmel say, hey, like, listen, my job will be irrelevant sooner than later because now everybody has their own news outlet. It used to be there was 5 stations you tune into and you hear the 3 entertainers that are on in the music act, and that's the people you see that are advertising. Now it's everybody has their own audience, whether that's 5,000, whether that's 100,000, whether that's 1 million, whether that's 10 million. Everybody's able to create their own audience and deliver their own news the way they want to, and you're at the forefront of that.
Yep. 100%.
What does it mean to find your grind to Casey Adams?
I like this question. I think find your grind. And since the day we met, like I've absolutely loved everything you guys are doing here, whether that's the Find Your Grind University events to the Instagram page of the content. Just I completely love what you guys do, number one. Number two, for me, I think finding your grind is finding yourself. And what I mean by that is when I was 16, I'm 19 now, right? Lots changed in 3 years. I think it's my self-awareness of where I want to go and figuring out what I can do that led me to find my grind or find my purpose or find my why or like find myself. And I think a lot of people where I come from, like they're not self-aware. They're letting outside influences affect who they are and they're not living their truth. And I think finding your grind is honestly comes down to finding yourself, because until you do that, you won't live your truth. And if you're not living your truth, you can't pursue what you're passionate about and actually go all in. Like someone like Larry King, like he's found his grind, right? He was completely self-aware. He went all in. He's still doing it. And I think finding your grind is something you can do forever, but it comes down to the self-awareness factor from day one.
Big time. I think Casey Adams has set the bar really high for people, you know, for the entire Gen Z world that is out there. I think this podcast has given so much value. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me.
Your story is
such
amazing,
a pleasure,
man.
Wait,
and,
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is he below Gen Z?
I'm Gen Z.
Okay, cool. I'm just checking.
So maybe this. I was born in 2000.
So what is
Okay.
Gen Z below that is Generation Alpha.
Yeah.
Is what it's called.
Okay.
Pretty
I
interesting.
didn't even know that.
Yeah.
They're
An interesting one.
They're going to be the people looking up to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Love
It's
it.
coming sooner than later. Casey, thank you, brother.
Absolutely.
All
Thanks
right,
so
man.
much for having me on. Yep.
Cheers.
Appreciate it.